I, Alan Duncan Thompson, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I will well and truly serve our sovereign lady the Queen.
Every police officer in Britain swears an oath to keep the peace and to prevent offences against people and property. But there was a time when some police officers played by different rules and could do things that nowadays would make your eyes pop out. Tonight, 7 brave coppers speak out about life in an age before paperwork ran riot.
They used to give people electric shocks.
Bad things happen.
But as police officers lost their power, did we all lose something too? Were things better in the good old days?
The British policeman belongs to his neighbourhood. He is the friend of everyone who lives there.
Is that your dinner?
Back in the 60s, the British police officer was a respected pillar of the community.
You could go out on the street and you were the man of the manor. It was your manor. Murder, assault, helping old ladies across the road, animals. That's a nice dog.
I was proud to be a Bobby, James. Really, really proud to be a Bobby, and in a tough city.
These were the days when the law gave a police officer real power and the freedom to do his job as he saw fit.
You know, I'm not proud. I'm not a violent man by nature, but if somebody's going to have a pop at me, running at me with a broken glass or a knife, he's going to get it. Make no bones about that.
It was a time when coppers were able to use their initiative. But the difference between right and wrong could be a grey area.
What was acceptable bending of the rules back then, and what's unacceptable?
Yeah, there wasn't really a line. It was only your own moral thinking, duty, ethics, whatever. It was quite common, somebody arrested, say, for an armed robbery, wearing a balaclava, shotgun and whatever. You would search a house, take hairs out of their comb or hairbrush, put them in the balaclava that was said to be found at the scene. That was quite a common practice. And fibres from clothing were found. Say if they jumped over the railings in a bookies, they'd put fibres from the prisoner's trousers on the railings and the lab would come and find them.
How do you know they're guilty?
Well, you know they must be guilty. You know they're at something. You just do. You wouldn't be a policeman if you didn't, would you? Well, at the time, you never thought it was bad or good. In your eyes, you were performing good old British justice, and if it meant bending a bit of the evidence, you did it.
In the old days, becoming a police officer was a simple matter, just so long as you were made of the right stuff.
I had an examination which really was just bend over, are you gay, you're in. And that was it. I found myself at training school. 13 weeks of shouting at you. They thought they knew a man who had moral fibre, I think. And if you looked right, then that was it.
Once they were in, our new boys learnt on the job. With a little help from the senior officers.
At police headquarters, there is always a police sergeant on duty.
The sergeant, everybody respected him. He was the real image of a real police sergeant. Massive, strong man. He could do press-ups with one arm. It was his world.
At the marketplace, some boxes have fallen off a moving lorry.
He used to push people out of the way and walk with a sergeant's stick. And get out of my way, I'm on the Queen's duty.
Is enough to send the people on their way.
Never called me Steve, he always called me 186. Do this 186, do that 186.
Protecting property and preventing crime. That's what you pay a policeman to do. But there are other things.
Whenever you walk through the market, people would give you meat, bacon, vegetables for Sergeant's breakfast. And if they didn't, he'd send you out to go and ask for it. Just to go out and give my regards in the market, will you? And off I went. And if he was given anything particularly interesting or bigger, like a kitchen appliance or something from somewhere, he'd have it delivered by the van. But in those days, it was quite normal for people to see the police doing that. Everybody thought of you as part of the community. It was total and utter respect.
Respect, I mean, to maintain a respect as a police officer, you rely totally on history. You rely totally on your bearing. Of course, a lot of them didn't respect us, and you had to deal with those in a slightly different way. The criminals knew exactly who you were and how they might be dealt with. And it usually meant that they would be taken into a corner and told their fortune. I think that was probably one way that I can describe it. And
What does that mean?
told the fortune, well, that was a clip round your ear. I mean, that's the way I'm replying to that, you know.
Get off me, man! Fucking hell! Get some coffee, yeah?
Was it legal to do that?
Of course not. No, legality, what's that got to do with anything? You've got a job to do. You're a police officer. You've got to find someone responsible for that offence. And you did it in any which way you could.
Can I mention 2 words to you and see if they mean anything? Station stamp.
No, you don't want to go there. That's really...
Every female used to live in fear of the station stamp.
But
Skirt up, pants down, stamp on the backside.
on the bottom, yes, yes. It was part of the initiation ceremony. Whoever did it was a very silly boy.
You didn't do it.
I didn't. I certainly did. Well, no, I didn't do it really.
We were working late shift one evening, me and I think about 5 of the guys. One of them went, "Okay, time for the initiation." This guy went over to the sergeant's desk and picked up the old date stamp and the ink pad, and dumped it like that, and then started coming towards me. And I thought, oh my God, I was terrified. That was more frightening to me than going out to public disorder and a riot, I think, because these were the people I trusted. "Oh, come on, Carol, be a sport." And they all started to come over to me. And I felt cornered, and I I behaved a bit like a wild animal. I was in that corner and I actually said, OK, one of you, the first one that comes forward with the date stamp, if you stamp me and mark me, I'm going to mark you. I'm going to scratch your face and I'm going to mark you and I'm going to hurt you in any way I can. You know, if you're working in an all-male environment, you've got to learn to take some of it. It sounds awful. At the time, it was part of day-to-day life. Either have humour or really pack up and leave, I think. Because if it made you so unhappy, it wasn't going to go away. And it didn't go away for many, many years.
In most towns, it's usually a policewoman who is called to arrest a woman suspected of shoplifting. And here, at Bridgend in Glamorgan, the car which takes her and the suspect to the police station is driven by a policewoman too.
In 1966, when this film was made, every British police force had a separate women's department. And the female police officer's role was restricted to a few appropriate tasks.
They didn't do real police work.
At the police station, the policewoman reports the arrest to her sergeant, who tells her to search the suspect and then take her to the charge room.
There used to be a thing where middle-aged women used to keep getting arrested for shoplifting, and it was all part of the menopause, and they used to deal with these women. In those days, there was a specific act and section for that. It was a defence, that they'd gone a bit loopy.
Next, a woman detective takes her fingerprints.
All this menopause and HRT was totally unheard of as far as I was concerned, 23. But as I've grown up, I've certainly had the brunt of it all now, so I know exactly what was going on, so capable of anything.
Policewomen keep a special lookout for small children who may be wandering or lost.
We were expected to instantly become experts in dealing with women and children. It was as if you were the fairer sex, and therefore you knew how those things worked.
Off duty, policewomen and policemen spend time together on occasions such as this. At the Glamorgan Police Social Club, a policewoman shows off the new summer uniform.
The uniform, when I first joined, consisted of what they called a hostess hat, a tunic with all the buttons on, and a handbag.
A regulation handbag.
A woman has to have a handbag.
And you kept all your notes in there and your compact and your lipstick, of course.
It was a pain in the backside.
We were issued 6-inch black wooden truncheons.
Which the only thing that it looked any good for was shoving 2 batteries down the end of and selling it in an Ann Summers shop, right?
Well, all I can say is you can imagine the crude comments.
It was supposed to fit into a handbag, this handbag that nobody ever carried.
And we all said, well, to be honest, if you've got a handbag with a truncheon in it, you'd rather swipe someone with your handbag than actually get the truncheon out.
While the female officers were wielding their handbags, getting confessions out of hardened criminals was a job for the boys.
We had one chap with one of these electric shock machines, like you could buy at a toy shop, but this seemed to be a bit stronger. And they used to give people electric shocks now and again just to frighten them. They were always younger men, shall I say, who were professional criminals. And he thought he deserved the truth, and that was a quick way of getting to it. There used to be a hostel, a police hostel. It's closed down now. It had baths still in the bedrooms. It had one room with 4 baths in, I think it was. They used to fill them with cold water and throw them in it. Not the bath, boom, you know. Having a cold bath for 10 minutes does you the world of good. It plays magic with your memory.
Did you do it?
No, I didn't. But that was somebody getting done for what they'd done. It was the culture. Yeah. And you thought you were doing right.
For over 2 years, the Police Research and Development Branch has been investigating modern equipment.
In the late 60s, the police got a new toy.
Panda 3 and Panda 4.
The Panda car was being rolled out in hundreds of stations around the country.
One conspicuous patrol car will do the work of at least 5 uniform foot patrols when it comes to crime.
One of the privileges, particularly if the sergeant was on your side and you pleased him, then he put you on a car.
They're always handy on nights because you could sleep in them. And you used to get them, and you used to meet girls on your beat, and the cars used to be rocking on empty car parks. And
The new piece of kit may have had its perks, but it came at a cost.
When the Panda car came out, it changed everything, absolutely everything. You would drive past the people, you know, the people who wanted to tell you about a neighbour who they'd heard broken into electric meter or gas meter, and they've heard son's going to break into chemist's shop tomorrow night down the road. All that went.
3B to Panda 3. Do you receive me?
And so you'd started to lose the personal touch.
Panda 3 to Unit 3B, receiving.
That was a necessary thing. Don't misunderstand me. It was a necessary thing, but it was also a disaster.
And there were bigger challenges ahead for our coppers. The world outside was changing. In 1975, sex discrimination laws forced the police to stop treating female officers differently to the men. The women's and men's departments were integrated.
What do the men policemen think about it?
That's a rather large question. I suppose they're mixed.
They wanted the equality. They wanted to be called police officers, not women police officers. Something I will never understand, especially when you've got a PC Sandy Smith or something. You don't know whether you're dealing with a fella or a woman.
Today's policewomen are a new breed. Tougher, more competitive and more dedicated. But watching them in the gym, it's obvious that the women are physically not as strong as the men.
Equality was a noble aim. But many of the boys in blue were unconvinced.
We all know it's a farce to put a line of young girls facing a howling mob. It's stupid, it cannot work, it is irresponsible.
You know, you can't expect a woman to go in and fight like a man can. It doesn't work like that, does it?
Life is far tougher on the streets now, and with the retreat of chivalry, policewomen are not only attacked, but I do think that on occasion they're singled out as the weak link in the chain.
Many officers feared that giving women the same jobs as the men was weakening the force.
Oh, Christ. We've got a bloody woman now. Yeah? What use is she going to be? She should be at home. Her place is behind the kitchen sink. We used to have a police club, a bar. After a 2 to 10 shift, we'd generally go up there, have a drink, unwind. One time I opened up the door to go in and my shift inspector was stood on the other side of the door with a drink. And as I opened the door, he done the old clunk. And I was like, shut the door, and I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I could hear all my shift laughing on the other side. And I'm saying to them through the door, right, I'll see you tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow. They said, come on in and have a drink. With that, the door just whipped open. This inspector grabbed my ankles and literally pulled my legs out from under my feet. I went smacking down onto my back, smacked my head, and then, bear in mind, I wear a skirt, stockings and suspenders, legs apart. He dragged me on my back around the snooker room table. All the shift is there, clapping, oh yeah, woo, laughing and joking and everything. If I was to now burst into tears, you know, or tell them all to fuck off or whatever and go running out of there, yeah, my life wouldn't be worth living. I stood there and I drank my drink and I had a laugh and a joke with them. Even though inside I was absolutely dying. It was just... it affects us. That will never leave me. All the time I'm drawing breath.
What was your first experience of the police before you joined?
Basically, I was out with my dog. We had a dog, Ravi. He was a German Shepherd. He was scared of his own shadow. He was good as gold. I was walking down the street with him and he was off his lead. This panda car almost skidded when it came up to me, wound the window down and pretty much said, "Get your fucking dog on a lead, you packy bastard." Back in the 70s, 80s, you know, there was a lot of racism. The only time you saw an ethnic minority on television was the black and white minstrel show. They were being played by white people in black makeup.
It was the late 70s, and the police were increasingly making use of a power that allowed them to stop and search anyone they thought suspicious.
So is this your vehicle?
Sus law. It meant sus is suspect, a suspect person. What are you doing? The police officer was at liberty to just stop anybody in the street and say, what are you doing?
Alleged concern left 2 transistor radios. Leave a golf.
Hey, you two, come over here. Just a minute, hold on, Andrew. What have you got there?
No right, copper. You haven't got a search warrant.
Look, son, I don't need a warrant to stop and search anyone. Now, what have you got in there?
But the use of the sus law would have explosive consequences.
Some say it discriminates particularly against black youths.
The figures show a disproportionate number of young blacks arrested for sus in the capital, between 40 and 44%.
Well, it sort of went on all right, but of course, the people who did object, I do remember, were the coloured people. Can I say coloured in this? Yeah. Black people. The people who objected to this were the black people.
SAS has become a major factor in embittering relations between the black community and the police.
The SAS law, I don't know if you know this, is Section 4 of the Vagrancy Act 1824. It was an act of Parliament passed at the end of the Napoleonic Wars. So it was a very, very broad power. And it was used wrongly in many, many cases against young black kids in Brixton.
This is Alan in 1979.
I'm Alan Murray, a police inspector attached to the Special Patrol Group from Scotland Yard.
A talented young copper, he'd been fast-tracked through the Met. And by his late 20s, he was an inspector in the Special Patrol Group, the SPG.
But a very real dilemma facing the police is that the methods the SPG use to break up political and industrial confrontations may damage the generally good relationship the police enjoy with the public.
The SPG's uncompromising tactics were becoming increasingly controversial.
There's a disproportionate amount of complaints against the SPG. They seem to be very much more aggressive, very much heavier tactics than the ordinary policemen.
We went to some pretty ugly scenes, but I'm afraid that these were the times that we lived in, and there were, you know, bad things happen.
23rd of April 1979, Southall, West London. The chain of events about to unfold would mark the beginning of the end for old school policing.
Come Southall, that was pretty frightening.
"3,000 local people and anti-fascist activists were protesting against a National Front meeting. 6 SPG units were called in to provide tactical support to the local police. Alan was in charge of a unit of around 30 men.
We arrived about lunchtime, and there was this really strong atmosphere of agitation. Sikhs, Muslims, the whole of the population of Southall were on the streets. It's always when the first brick gets thrown that the whole thing goes up. Somebody threw a brick at one of our vans, and then we were just pelted with bricks. I don't remember the incident with Blair Peach.
In the melee, which was later described by some as general police brutality, Blair Peach suffered a fractured skull and died.
The 33-year-old teacher named Blair Peach was struck on the head. He died in hospital 4 hours later. For many members of the public, a line had been crossed.
In their posters and in their chanting, they accused the SPG of murdering Blair.
Demonstrators were making no secret of their belief. Police from the Special Patrol Group struck the blow that killed Blair Peach.
In the days following the killing, the Met set up an internal investigation.
Peach's death is being pursued with victim. Mr. Peach's death is resumed here in London next week. And should that happen...
We got a call to go to Southall, where there was an investigation underway. I was told very early on that they had established that it was either me or one of my men.
I'm going to read to you the charge as shown on the discipline.
Witness reports were contradictory, but some appeared to point towards Alan.
I was the first guy out of the first vehicle, and I think some of the witnesses had said that they thought it was the first person out of the first vehicle. But I went on identification parades, no one picked me out.
You don't remember seeing Blair Peach?
That's right. I know that I didn't hit anybody at that point, and I didn't see any of my guys hit anybody at that point. But they were old-fashioned, good cop, bad cop. Just tried to bully me into confessing. We know you did it. I said, well, show me the evidence. Do you want our uniforms? Do you want our truncheons? Do you want our boots? Do you want our vehicles? Now, there was no DNA at that time, but there was forensic evidence that could have been gathered from them. We don't need that, son. Don't start that with us, son. And we certainly knew, the kind of tactics that they were employing against us were the same as they employed against others. So, I began to think, this is all going wrong. A police investigation at this level should not be like this.
The Met has always said its investigation was determined and thorough. No officer was charged with the killing. But to the public, it looked like the police couldn't be trusted. The years to come would leave the police reeling from clashes with the public and growing criticism.
All of a sudden, you were absolutely laden down with investigations against police officers.
Tonight's revelations are only the latest in a long string of allegations.
But the controversy is unlikely to die down.
It's just part of the erosion of people's respect for the police force.
One of Sir Kenneth Newman's recent predecessors said there was institutionalised wrongdoing. The chairman of the Police Federation declared the allegations to be absolutely dynamite.
There were lots of scandals at that time.
On a scale he'd never experienced.
I can't think of any in particular, there are that many.
Hundreds of policemen left under a cloud of suspicion. Accountability is one of the Met's major...
There was a series of high-profile resignations, and some rather less high-profile ones.
Why did you leave?
I just lost faith totally. I couldn't rely on people who were supposed to be my supervising officers.
But soon after his departure, Stephen was caught in what he's convinced was a police sting.
I was charged with bribing a police officer. Perhaps it was wrong, and yes, I committed an offence, but to be set up by a friend with so much history together, I thought it was diabolical. And that is exactly how the police was going. There's no trust anywhere anymore.
From tomorrow, new rights to protect suspects come into force as the main plank of the government's law and order policy.
In 1984, our coppers entered a new age.
We have to be a force that thinks, a force that cares.
The government stepped in with a new set of laws to keep the police in check.
I mean, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act changed a lot of things. It's our biggest sort of regulator, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act.
Critical changes relate to what happens in the police station itself. More detailed records must be kept.
Hello, police, can I help you? And where are you? You're outside the tube station, Lancaster Gate. Yes, and what's the problem then?
From now on, police officers' conduct would be monitored more closely than ever before.
Tape recording of interviews with suspects will be introduced, and pilot schemes are already underway.
Was it a good thing?
The tape's coming in. Oh yeah, great thing. Yeah, great. I mean, if you think about the old-fashioned method, to think, you know, in the 80s in this country, two detectives can go sit in a cell with a prisoner and talk to him for 2 or 3 hours, and then go leave that cell and go sit down and have a coffee or a pint or whatever, and get the notebooks out and say, right, what did he say? And then start writing down what their recollection was of the interview and the potential confession. It's an outrageous system. And you look back now and think, that feels like about 200 years ago, doesn't it? So tapes are great.
But for the old guard, the new technology would be a tipping point.
You could see that things were going to get worse. Things were going to be more technical.
Prior to 1984, 85, you can threaten them, you can do all sorts of things. They would probably burst out crying, and then you give them all the love you need, and they will be forthcoming in what they've done. That would be a great interview, wouldn't it? There was fewer and fewer as you got towards the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, if you like, and then after that, well, things changed.
In 1993, the death of one teenager in southeast London would seal the fate of old school policing.
5 white youths stabbed Stephen Lawrence to death, shouting racial abuse.
For years, the investigation into the death of Stephen Lawrence failed to find his killers.
We in the Met feel a sense of shame for the incompetence of that first investigation.
The publication of today's report on the killing of Stephen Lawrence is a very important moment in the life of our country. It is a moment to reflect, to learn, and to change.
After Lawrence, allegations of institutional racism became impossible to ignore, and changes would come thick and fast.
Britain's police forces are making a special effort to recruit black and Asian youngsters to their ranks.
This rap video is just one of the latest attempts by the police to recruit more black officers.
The force was trying to modernize, and everyone had to move with the times.
We all ended up going for various training, for, God, my mind's gone blank now.
Every officer went on a course, to, which I'll think of the correct name in a minute.
Because obviously of the racist side of things.
every officer had to go on a diversity course.
That was the word I couldn't think of then, diversity training.
You can see why that needed to happen.
Diversity training, there was a need, certainly, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s, you really needed to change the language people were using.
The new training came in for the right reasons, but for our coppers, it would have unforeseen consequences.
I think it was a case of let's hit them hard. Almost the first words was, right, you're all police officers and you're all racist. Unfortunately, that sort of training almost had a how would you say it, a backlash effect. Yeah.
How do you mean?
I get the comments, oh, you'll go far in the job, and I know what they mean, but I'd say sarcastically, you know, oh, so you think I'm a really good officer? They said, well, no, you know. I said, well, no, I don't know. They said, well, you know, because of your colour, you'll go far. You need a bit of political correctness. You know, you have to think why political correctness came in the first place.
What do you think of political correctness?
Political correctness, well, I mean, it's a well-used, well-oiled term at the moment, isn't it? Political correctness. I think we all have a view on political correctness, and it's bollocks. I don't think anyone knows exactly what they're allowed to say and what not to say.
As years went on, and the political correctness came in of what you could say, what you couldn't say, you're frightened of breathing. I never changed. Yeah, that's probably why I was called a dinosaur.
The changes, the wind of change has come in a lot in the last 10 years. Created a lot of bureaucracy in many cases. Good cops never needed any of that. Good cops were good cops. They did the right thing.
Our coppers had joined the force in a time when they had power and respect. But within a generation, their hands had been tied by paperwork and protocol. And they found themselves in a world they no longer recognized.
You could see the personal side of it were going, and you weren't having the laughs. The good laughs and the good times. And I just thought, enough's enough. I'm off. And that's what I did. Nobody tried to stop me leaving. You know, some people maybe thought I were rubbish, or my final report said on it, written by someone who was trying to get on, and who did get on, someone who didn't know me, right? Hey, what did it say on it now? Oh, an unremarkable career, right? Faced 3 guns, 20 knives, dealt with lots of bodies. What's an unremarkable career? But I was chuffed a buggery that he'd put it, because all I ever wanted to be was an almost everyday copper, right? An unremarkable copper. And for that, I was very proud.
I used to be non-swearing. I then joined the police force, and within a week I'd been transformed into some fisherwoman.
Upon reflection, yeah, I suffered sexual discrimination.
But I wouldn't have done any other job. If I could go back and do it again, I would. But boy, I'd get my promotions a lot quicker.
I don't recognise it at all now. Different job entirely. Best thing to do is leave or retire.
Do you have regrets from your career?
No, I've never regretted anything, really.
I was very naive when I joined. I joined at 24. I thought all the cops would be good guys and all the bad guys would be bad guys, but it was a bit more complicated. Some of the bad guys were actually all right. Some of the cops I didn't care for much.
And that's it.
And the series continues at the same time next week here on 4 with Confessions of a Doctor. And you can see contemporary copper culture in our shiny new satire Babylon tomorrow night at 10 o'clock. The first part is available now on 4OD. Well, it's back to the 70s again next tonight for a look at stuff that never get on telly now.